So today is all about creative and design for digital. So we're taking a bit of a left turn from print, but we know we live in a digital world. Print has its place. We all know that. Print is not going anywhere anytime soon. However, digital technologies and digital communication are obviously huge parts of our lives. And so, how can we get the creative and design work that we do for print, how do we translate that into digital and vice versa? So that's what we're thinking about today. So in Pressed for Time Print Company, our digital strategy department is our newest department. So we have this as kind of an arm to what we do in the printing world to help customers have kind of a one-stop shop, as it were, for all communication needs, whether print or digital. So that is what we are going to look at today. And I have lots to chat about, lots and lots and lots. But first and foremost, how we're going to start today is we have someone who is going to speak to the creative side and the kind of strategic side of content creation and digital marketing and social media influencing and all of that stuff. And we have the lovely Margot. So Margot, how are you? Are you there?
I'm good. Hi, I'm here. Thanks for having me.
Hi. You're more than welcome to keep your video off, but if you want to turn your video on, by all means, please do that. So I will. There we
Okay.
are. Hello. Hi. Hi. So Margot will tell you more about herself, but I just thought she's such an incredible kind of strategic mind when it comes to all things content creation. So I am going to tackle the more I don't want to say boring. It's not boring, but the more kind of technical aspects after Margot has her talk with you about all things creative in the world of kind of digital marketing. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. She's going to share hers, and the floor is yours.
Okay, amazing. I will share my screen and I will also probably stop sharing my video just to make sure everything is flowing properly. Um, okay, so content creation. Thanks again for having me. This is really exciting and awesome to talk to all of you guys. I guess we'll jump right into it and I'll kind of talk about what I did. And Ryerson was such a huge part of networking for me, which I would encourage all of you to do. It was really great. Like being in Toronto, you can meet so many people in the city and through Ryerson, people in different programs, and you just never know who you're going to meet and how they're going to help you out down the road. So I would really encourage all of you to take advantage of that. I know in fourth year, a lot of people started scrambling, being like, oh, wait, I don't really have too much to show for outside of being in school. So any opportunity that you can take to add something to your resume, I think is amazing. So about me, Ryerson, when I was in first year, I actually went to a fashion networking event and ended up interning that summer after first year for Startup Fashion Week, where I was doing graphic design and pastel dress party. Pastel Dress was a smaller company, and so I kind of got to dabble in a bit of like a bunch of different areas of the business. So I was doing graphic design, photography, was planning photo shoots, doing influencer partnerships, and also helping out with marketing. So that was a good opportunity to kind of test the waters in a bunch of different areas and see what I liked. In second year is when I actually started blogging. It was a creative outlet that I started with a friend, and then we went our own ways and kind of turned into a part of a business for me, which wasn't the goal with it. And I'm really grateful that it has become that. And as well in second year, I was working part-time with Pastel Dress Party. In third year, I did an internship at XMC, which is a sports marketing agency. So I did kind of the traditional intern things at an agency. I was like organizing BioSteel packages for people, and I was shipping. I shipped these like big tennis balls to Milos Raonic in France, and was very stressed about shipping that out through FedEx. But I was doing that, and I was also doing graphic design and helped them a bit with social media, having started my blog a year prior. Then fourth year, I put graduation. I feel like I just kind of focused on school and was doing some content creation during then. My Instagram had been up for around 2 years, so I had connections. My name was kind of out there a bit more with agencies and whatnot. And so people were reaching out to me to do sponsored content and to work with them. Then after graduation, I guess the connections that I made while I was at Ryerson really came in handy because right after graduation, I joined Counterculture Agency. I was one of the founding team members. I was a community lead and partner. And so our focus was influencer management, as well as influencer programming for brands. So how do we strategically create a program that will kind of show results? And then also did digital marketing for certain clients. I really got to understand through that experience the brand perspective of what's a successful campaign. How can you achieve that through the right channel, through the right content, using the right people? So that was a great opportunity for me to bring, my influencer type of experience into it and also understand the brand side of it. Ongoing was content creation, sponsored content, and also working for brands. So I had brands reaching out to create content for them to use it on their own social. And then during the pandemic, I kind of took a look at what I was doing and had an opportunity come through to found a company called Superset Studios with a friend of mine. We do kind of the manufacturing of sensory-based products. She has more of the skills to actually make the product. And my focus is mainly operations, graphic design, content creation, marketing. I feel like when you're a business owner, you're kind of the intern and CEO. So many roles, but all of the experience that I had prior to that really led me to being able to kind of know what I'm doing sort of in this business. So that's my experience. Getting into content. So content's everywhere. I feel like it's such a broad term and there's so many different mediums and platforms where you're just taking in content like constantly. To me, when I'm looking at creating content, to create successful content, you need to really look at it through a specific lens and really be clear on your objectives with that piece of content. When I am working on content, usually my focus right now is in social media. So Instagram, even through Instagram, there are different lenses that you can approach the content for. So Reels obviously is video content. There's the Reel tab on Instagram. And that's kind of more interactive than a static post, kind of bite-sized content. You can grab people's attention through that with audio and the video as well. Posts, obviously, when you're looking at Instagram, the overall feed is very important. And so the posts, when you're working with a brand or if you're the brand, you really kind of need to understand what your goal is, like what do you want from Instagram, what's the aesthetic that you're going for, and all your posts kind of should all follow along with that. And really think about like what you're showcasing as a brand. And then in terms of stories, that's the opportunity to show a bit more personality, educate more. When it was rolled out, it was a really new way of interacting with the audience. So that was, I think, like a really big game changer, which was obviously a couple of years ago. But I think that's when people started kind of seeing Instagram as like, okay, it's not just a picture, like we can really do a lot more. And I'll go kind of into it later of different ways that I use the different types of content for a brand. TikTok obviously blew up, especially throughout the pandemic. But the algorithm makes it so that you can post in kind of a less curated way than Instagram. Instagram is very focused on like the whole aesthetic of your feed, whereas TikTok is more just like, is your content resonating with the algorithm and what people like? And so it's just been very interesting to see how TikTok has evolved since it was Musical.ly. So now, on my For You page, I get a mix of recipes, comedy, self-help. There's like even people evolving into vlogging on TikTok. So it's very interesting to look at that, and from brand side to kind of see, okay, what are the trends, and like how can you really leverage that to showcase your product, or educate your customer, or interact with an audience that you want to reach. In terms of website content, there's lifestyle content, also product shots. Obviously, product shots are huge if you're selling a product. So that's a focus of mine as well. And then newsletter, which is kind of a whole other beast, but I've worked with a couple clients on newsletter content, and I'll talk about that a bit later. In terms of content creation, so sharing a bit more about my own Instagram and that whole world, it really did start as a creative outlet, and I got to develop my aesthetic and my brand voice and just kind of share my life. That was kind of the point of it. And yeah, I still wanted to keep it mainly creative. I work with brands with sponsored content, but I try to just keep it as authentic as possible. I don't want to rely on it as my main income. So it's still just kind of where I can connect with other people. And it's been just really great to make contacts, even just like making friends. A lot of the friends that I've made are actually through Instagram, and you can meet people who are like-minded. And so that's been really great for me. And also it's been interesting because I think I started around 2015. And so seeing how content has changed and how Instagram has changed since then is really interesting. Like the content back then, I think in terms of influencers, was very much like you were posing with a product. And now people don't want to be sold product 24/7. They want to feel like it's an authentic recommendation. So as a creator, it's like, how do you promote something while still making it seem like, yeah, I would actually use this product? And part of it is following people who you feel are truly authentic. And the other part of it is curating content well. This is actually a screenshot of my feed here. And in these 12 pictures, there's 3 sponsored posts, which I feel like don't jump out like super crazy to you, where you're like, oh, obviously she got paid for that. So like the top middle one is a clothing ad. The second from the top right, like in the forest, is for cotton. That was another clothing ad. And right under was for a brand called Bloom, which was a reel, and kind of showcasing how to use their product. So that was a fun little campaign. But yeah, when I work with brands, I want to make sure it's an authentic fit. And I think from the brand side too, you want to align yourself with creators who have an audience that is aligned with yours, and who feel like they're a good representation of who the brand wants to work with. Then I'd like to understand, what's the goal of the campaign? How do you create the content that is aligned with your own platform, but also is going to help the brand reach their goals? So for example, the Bloom post, obviously they want to showcase how this, like, it was like an adaptogenic milk blend. So I showcased how to actually use it. You blend it, add water, all that stuff, and then you can make your matcha. So incorporating it in a lifestyle way that fits me, and like I like showing food and the recipes that I make. So that made sense for me. And how can I showcase the product and make it a piece of content that's valuable for the brand as well, that they can reuse, that they can educate their customer on. And then, yeah, so ensuring the product looks good. That's always key. Obviously, I wouldn't like shoot clothing that's super wrinkly, or a product that looks damaged. And then also in terms of captions for my own feed, it needs to fit my brand voice. I don't want to feel too salesy, and I still need to get across key messaging. So there's a lot that kind of goes into captions. But I think brands are realizing that you can't just like, I think back in the day, they used to like really tell you exactly what to write. And they've realized that now you need to kind of trust the influencer, and trust that they know what's going to resonate with their audience as well. In terms of content for brands, so I have brands reaching out to me to create content for them. So I need to understand, what's the purpose of the post? where is it going? So obviously content that goes on a website that's a product shot is going to be a lot different than educating a customer through a TikTok video. And then what's a brand's aesthetic? That's obviously very important. If I'm creating content for a brand and their Instagram feed is super light and bright, I'm not going to create a super moody shot because that's just not going to fit. And then like, what's the point of having worked with me? So those are kind of things that I keep in mind. So I'm going to go through a couple examples of brands that I've worked with in different capacities to give you an idea of things to think about that will hopefully help you guys with the assignment as well. So McGuire Shoes, they're a brand from Montreal. They actually have a store on Dundas West, and they reached out to me to send them a batch of images that they could use on Instagram, as well as I think on their website and just digitally. So their goal was to showcase their product, but to also kind of show a more Toronto vibe. They shot a lot of content in Montreal, and they wanted to showcase Toronto to kind of let people know also like, hey, like we are in Toronto. So I picked some spots in the West End that I felt were like cute and made sense for the brand. And also like the product, I wanted to showcase it in a more lifestyle lens. It's obviously not a direct product shot, but because this was specifically going on social, I wanted it to feel like when you're scrolling on Instagram and when you're seeing the content, you don't want to feel like it stands out as like, oh, this is a branded post. So I worked with one of my friends as the model, and we kind of went around and shot these images that like could be something that I could just shoot, that any of you could just shoot. It's like, here's someone who's dressed cool, but happens to be wearing McGuire shoes. And so that was kind of the way that I approached the content with McGuire, and they're really happy with that. So that's kind of the first way. Then Ellen Studio. So Ellen Studio was a client of mine where I was doing freelance social for her. And I was essentially curating her Instagram. So there were a lot of different things that went into this, starting with just the feed in general. We started from scratch. So it was really great to kind of build a relationship with her and understand, okay, like what is your goal with Instagram? Who are you trying to reach? With her, she had existing clients. She wasn't super interested in pushing her services because she does it part-time. So it was more of just establishing herself as someone who's knowledgeable in the industry, sharing her work. And then, you know, if she happens to get clients, great, but that wasn't 100% her focus. It was just mainly building up the brand itself. And so in terms of posts, we were sharing a mix of design content and photography from past projects that she worked on, as well as inspirational content that was aligned with the brand. So with the inspo content, it was things in different areas like art, decor, architecture, all things that made sense for the feed. And that was also interesting for her audience to look at. Also, in terms of curating the feed, we actually kind of flowed from one color to the next, month to month. So this is a screenshot of some of the content from October, and we went with a more orangey vibe. So that was fun, just curating that. And also it was a great way for her to connect with other artists and brands just by sharing their content. Obviously, you kind of hope that it puts you on their radar as well. And then in terms of hashtags, this is something that we implemented from the beginning. We created hashtags like LNS Project 001, so that people can go back and they can actually click on that hashtag. And let's say you're interested in Project One, then you're able to see all of the pictures from that project in one area. So that was really important for us to add in the captions for every single design post. Then in terms of stories, the stories were actually, I think we did like 3 or 4 series a week. So it was very time consuming, but it was really great to kind of build up her reputation in the space. So we would share project behind the scenes and like final project details as well, saved as highlights. So you can go back and you can look at what LNS Project 1 was and all of that. And then we did a lot of series that were highlighting artists and design projects that established them as a thought leader and knowledgeable in the space. It provided more value to the audience than just trying to get them to work with a brand. And so I think in terms of content creation for her, it was like, okay, what can we do? Like, who are we? Who's our audience? What do they like? What do they want to see? And that's kind of the lens that I took when I was curating that content. It's like, okay, we're going to focus on artists and knowing the aesthetic of LN Studio, what she likes, what her customers like, finding specific websites that are sharing articles about artists and brands doing cool things. It really made her seem like she knew like what was trendy and was like on top of what was going on. So the stories were really great for that. And she got a lot of good feedback where people were like, wow, like your stories are actually showing me more than just reposts. And I think a lot of brands default to that and don't develop the story campaign as much as they should. And in terms of brand voice for her, when we started, she wanted to really be more professional, and realizing that a lot of her followers were family and friends. At the beginning, she kind of like we both just shifted to adding a bit more personality, starting to use I instead of we in certain instances. And that way it was more personal, it was more approachable, and people felt like they were still talking to Lara instead of just talking to someone behind a phone. It really helped to build a community, and yeah, that was really great and like an interesting note to take from that that brand. In terms of SuperSense Studios, so I do a lot of the content now, and there are so many different facets of the business and ways to showcase the product through different mediums and platforms. And so, yeah, well, let's talk about it. Website, obviously, we have product imagery. And in terms, like for us, one of our main products is candles. So I think every industry has their traditional content and traditional website shots, like whether it's clothing, you kind of expect, you know, a neutral background and the model wearing the clothes. For candles, a lot of artsy brands are using a lot of still life props. But for us, we wanted to showcase our product in a way that was cool, but still showed our personality. So we shot with film, and then we used this iridescent type paper to give some sort of effect. So it wasn't just on a white background. And it just stood out more than what a lot of other candle brands were doing. And a big thing for us is color, as you can see through a lot of this content. That's a big focus for us. And so, yeah, this candle showcased what the product is while still having some sort of personality. So that's kind of where we went with all of our product shots. And then on the website as well, we incorporated lifestyle content. So the top right image is an image that we used on our website too. And with that, we're selling more of like a lifestyle. What's the vibe that we're kind of creating? Can a customer imagine our product in their space, and targeting the customer that likes this kind of aesthetic as well? In terms of Instagram, so obviously the content differs than traditional website content. When brands reach out to me, it's really important to know where the content is going, because not everything that can go on a website will go on Instagram. So for us, we want to shoot lifestyle content that is inspiring and showcasing the product, but things that are cool, that are kind of out of the box. And yeah, for reels, showcasing product in use with candles, with scented products, all that kind of stuff. There's so much opportunity to be creating content that is different than, or like that video can really show more than just like a still life shot. You can also obviously reach a larger audience with the Reels tab. So that's really important with Instagram strategy nowadays. And something to keep in mind, I noted safety areas. So on stories and on Reels, at the top and bottom, I know now with stories, the bottom is different, but with Reels, there's like a 250 pixel, I think, safety area at the top and bottom to keep in mind if you're adding text on a video. Like that's the worst if you start exporting, or if you export a video and then you go to watch it and you realize it's cut. And Reels, when they show up in your feed, are cropped. So those are things to definitely keep in mind when you're creating content. It's like, what are the ratios for every platform? There's different recommendations. For Pinterest, you know, a portrait photo is better than a landscape photo. And yeah, with Instagram, there's a ton of other guidelines to follow. And then with Reels as well, keeping in mind what the cover photo is going to be. If you're posting the actual image in the feed, but Instagram has kind of realized like people want their feed to still look good. So you can upload your own cover. You can even adjust where the cover is. You can move it up and down in settings. So anyway, that's that for Reels. And then stories. So as I was talking about previously, stories for us, we really want to engage with the audience. So we do series that are like this or that, show behind the scenes to, I feel like stories are a good way of like being a little less curated than on the feed, but to give behind the scenes where it's like, you don't need to think too much about it. But you're still kind of showcasing what's going on and inspiring others. It's just a good way to build a community and to kind of stay up to date with like who's doing what. And then it's great for education. We just did a series where we were sharing our 4 fragrances and the different notes, and just, yeah, it's great for snippet education. And obviously you can save those as highlights. So Instagram has really made it easy for brands to use their content in so many different ways to educate the customer that you barely even need to go to their website. You can really get a gist of a brand just through Instagram. And yeah, stories as well. We do inspo posts, like we share design, fashion. It's a good way of expanding who you are and showcasing more of like, what are you into? Like we love pop culture, design, fashion. And so that's a great opportunity to be more than just a product that you're pushing onto people. In terms of TikTok, if you actually go to our TikTok, we don't have too much going on. There was a lot going on this year, but in terms of our strategy, there's just so many options of what we can do. It can be more product focused. It can be behind the scenes, teasers, showing more personality of like, who are the founders. TikTok has so many trends that brands can really utilize. And you just need to think about, okay, like, here's this trend. How can my brand really like incorporate itself in it? A lot of Instagram Reels, I think, can go on TikTok, but I don't think that all TikTok content can go on Instagram. And the only reason I say that is because I think there are trends that are a little niche to TikTok. And I think that people who aren't on the app and see it on Instagram might not completely grasp it. And TikTok is also a little more loose, a little more fun. And TikTok is a lot more, Instagram is a lot more curated. So I don't think that all TikTok content can go on Instagram. And also TikTok, you can really post as much as you want. Not everything's going to end up on everyone's page. So it's a completely different platform, although the medium is the same. It's a very different approach for brands. And then in terms of newsletters, newsletter is also a really broad a broad platform or medium to be reaching out to your customers, because you can have more inspirational newsletters where you're just kind of guiding people to your website, and that content can just be more lifestyle. Then you can have a newsletter that's more product focused, and in that case you're highlighting the product, you're choosing copy that is directly kind of pushing people to purchase. And then you have more educational things too, where it's like, okay, am I talking about fragrance? What should the content be? Is it going to be images of the fragrance oils, and how do you convey that through a newsletter? I think a lot of content for newsletter from the brand's perspective, or from my perspective specifically, I use a lot of content from Instagram and our website content onto the newsletter, but we just format it in a different way. So as you can see, I took a screenshot of our capsule launch with Nordstrom, the announcement that we made. And so some of that content was just taken for Instagram, and I put it into the newsletter. But I think newsletters also, there's the opportunity to kind of have fun with graphics on images. And so, yeah, that's a whole other way to be using content and to be thinking about that. Yeah. The reason I wanted to showcase that was just to show the safety area that I took into consideration with the text. But anyway, you can go on the Instagram and watch that if you'd like. In terms of captions, captions are tough. And to be honest, copywriting doesn't come naturally to a lot of people. And I think it comes with a lot of experience. So it's great that you guys are kind of dabbling into it. But you really have to understand a brand's voice when you are creating a caption. And take into consideration, like, people don't want to read 3 huge paragraphs under a picture. So how do you get the key messaging across in the most concise way? Are there brand hashtags that you should be adding into it? And as well, are there brand relevant emojis that you can use? It really depends on the brand. If the brand is a little more professional, maybe you're not going to use emojis. And if a brand's more fun, they might have emojis that are used consistently throughout their copy. So I figured I would show you a couple examples of copy that I've worked on to kind of see how all of this comes together. So for LN Studio, this is just a design shot where we decided to talk about televisions. So televisions are a living room staple, but unfortunately they can be an eyesore if a space is not designed with a wellness approach. Having a built-in entertainment system removes distractions and gives the room a sense of calm. Walking into the space feels like an escape rather than a cluttered room. So with LN Studio, she really approaches design with a wellness approach. So we made sure to incorporate that in the caption. I think it was concise enough. And then we added the hashtag for the project, tagged LN Studio and the photographer, which we did for all posts. So there was consistency throughout all of the content that we were posting. It was kind of always the caption at the top, the dashes, and then all of the other info below it. Then in terms of Elixir, it was a client of mine for a bit. And with Elixir, they, at the time when they hired me, they really wanted to stand out compared to all of the other juice companies in Toronto. So with their feed, we kind of worked on content that was a little more lifestyle, a little less typical juicery content. I feel like when I say that, people can't imagine exactly what I'm trying to convey, but they wanted to establish themselves as knowledgeable in the wellness space, and but still be like fun and like not super professional and like educational or boring in some sense. So for this post, we were talking about reishi mushrooms. So if you're new to medicinal mushrooms, here's a quick lowdown. Reishi has been found to help boost immune systems as well as reduce fatigue and stress, making it a great adaptogen to add in your daily diet. Find the superfood in our cocoa reishi almond oats, adapto frappe, and mocha. So we had information about what reishi mushrooms are, and then linked it back to the brand through, telling customers what product of theirs they can have with reishi mushrooms. And then also in terms of emojis, because Elixir didn't want to be so serious, obviously we can add fun emojis to kind of lighten the mood, make it a little more casual. Even like the way the copy is laid out, like Reishi, like it's a more design oriented way of laying the text out. So I think there's ways to kind of get a little fun with copy. And then the last picture is from SuperSense, just a teaser of a capsule that we were launching, some behind the scenes of capsule 2. What sensory products are you hoping to see tomorrow? Purple and orange are main brand colors. So purple hearts and orange hearts are used consistently. And then in terms of the question, like it's just great to engage with your audience in that way. But we try to keep it light, short, and we also have consistent copy around like your senses, arouse your senses, just keep it consistent from one post to the other. You never want to feel like it's different people creating captions for different posts. So that's that on captions. And that's actually it for everything that I was presenting. I hope that was enough. I hope that was educational for all of you. And if anyone has questions about anything, you can reach out to me, and I'd be happy to chat.
So good. Thank you,
Thank
Margot.
you.
Thank you. No, that was really helpful. I have lots of notes. I have some things that I hadn't thought about before, and I go, "Oh, yeah, that makes sense." And actually, I have a question for you. And if anyone has any questions that come to mind, please by all means type them in the chat now. And is it okay if we do a little Q&A?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that. So I really like the way kind of you described the way in which brands reach out to you and you kind of think about their products through a specific lens. So I'm just curious about like the process. So in terms of the timeline of a campaign, so the time from a company reaching out to you to want to work with you and you're creating content, maybe you're taking photographs, you're writing a caption, you're doing all of that stuff in the background. What's the time frame like in terms of like how long does that whole process take? And a second follow-up question is how does the vetting work? Like, do brands vet the content differently? I'm curious.
So in terms of vetting, like, do you mean like choosing the influencer to work with, or like what content they're picking, or?
Yeah. So, do you, for example, say, hey, here are 3 different options. Here are 3 different photos I've taken. Here are 3 different captions. Choose one. Or what does that process look like? Kind of the actual
Yeah.
content vetting.
Yeah, so essentially in terms of timelines, it really depends on one campaign to the next. I'd say when a brand reaches out to me, I give myself like 2 weeks probably to create the content. I think it's pretty fair. It gives you enough time to like have a weekend at least to create the content. For me, it's pretty quick to write up captions and that stuff. I think it just comes naturally at this point. But when delivering content to the clients, also really depends. Some of them are like, hey, whatever, as long as it fits your style. Some don't even care to like see the content beforehand. I always send it and I'll send a caption and then usually they'll approve it and I'll be like, okay, I'm going live with it on X day. So it really does depend from one brand to the next, but I would say like 2 weeks is a fair amount of time for brands to give creators. In terms of captions, I usually send one version and then they can make tweaks from that. But that's usually how that goes.
Great. No, that's really helpful to know. And there's some questions in the chat. So maybe I'll just be the little moderator here and I'll ask some questions. So, Kushil wants to know, would there ever be a situation where you think a brand should have more than one account? So maybe can you clarify that, Kushil? Can you maybe, I don't, do you know what they're asking, Margot?
I don't know if like the only thing I can think of is like a lot like a brand will have like a Canada version of their account or a US version of their account, which um, works for some brands. I think smaller brands should just keep it to one. But like larger brands like I don't know, food, alcohol, like just like the big brands. I know a lot of them have different accounts, and a lot of the time too, it's because they have like a marketing team in Canada versus a marketing team in the States. And so they kind of have budget allocated to the work in both countries, I guess. But yeah, I don't know if that's what they're talking about in terms of more than one account.
Okay, so Kushil, if you want to clarify, please feel free. But let's move on to the next question in the meantime. So Marissa is asking, how often would you post personally in a campaign? Do you have a posting schedule? Sorry,
Mm.
and in a campaign. So how often do you post?
Honestly, it really depends. It's funny because when I was a student, I was posting so much. It was like a post a day, and I'd be stressed. I'd be like, oh my God, what am I going to post today? And I think Instagram has also changed where people expect a little less of like frequent content. So right now it's kind of all over the place. But I try to not, I don't know, to not post too much back to back. It's also time of year really depends on paid campaigns. Obviously in the holiday there are so many more
Mm.
brands allocating budget there, so there's obviously more opportunity to work on paid campaigns. So it really depends. I don't have a content schedule that I work on just because it's not my full-time job, so it's not I'm not like super stressed about it.
Right.
But I know a lot of creators, like when I used to manage creators, I'd have creators who have a content schedule built out and they have a whole strategy of like, okay, what brand do I want to work with, how do I get there, what type of content should I be posting to attract that specific brand,
Mm.
and if it's a long-term partnership, how am I going to incorporate it throughout the months. So there's definitely the opportunity to schedule more, but not for me.
Yeah, lots of strategy involved, and it's really interesting you said that it's kind of almost a way if there is a content creator, an influencer who knows they want to work with a specific type of brand that they feel would be a good fit. It's interesting to think about. Like I hadn't thought that they're curating their feed to try and like grab the attention of this brand, which
Mhm.
is an interesting strategy in and
Yeah,
of
like
itself.
I was managing someone who was like, I really want a Vitamix. And I was like, okay, well, do you post about food? Like you need to post more about food in your stories, or like why would a brand look at your feed and be like, yeah, this person is a fit for our campaign?
Right, right. All right, next question. Peter's asking, before your larger following, did you ever find it hard to find people to work with to create content for clients? Did you reach out to them?
Um, Obviously, yeah, starting out there, when I started too, it was completely different than how it is now. I think there's a lot more people doing it with the goal of having it as, like for income and as a business. So when I started out, we were a lot less, and the Toronto community was a lot smaller. Also, with TikTok, it's like there's people who are huge on TikTok who don't have a big Instagram following. And I think it's up to PR companies and stuff to kind of update their lists. But as a creator, something that I used to do and that a lot of agencies do when they manage creators is they have a media kit where they have information about the creator, their demographics, brands they've worked with, their rates, and they'll send that out and update it, a couple times a year and resend it, and even just like pitch themselves. So I've definitely reached out to brands in the past and pitched myself. And yeah, I think if you want to work with a brand, there's no harm in reaching out and trying to get on their radar. And that's kind of how I built my audience.
Yeah, and that's really interesting to me too in regards to the media kit you mentioned because that's exactly what we call it in the magazine industry. So for the trade magazine I work for, we have a media kit that we send out to potential advertisers, people who we want to hopefully attract to then spend money advertising within the magazine, but it's almost like a sales pitch on paper. It's almost like a resume that is catered to reaching out to people who we want to work with and who we think would be a good fit. So it's interesting that that same media kit concept that I'm sure kind of has evolved from publishing is now
Mhm.
in the world of content creation and influencers. Okay,
Yeah.
just a couple more questions. So Brianna is asking, how was that first brand experience or post for you? So maybe could you speak to that first brand you worked with, whoever that was?
Hmm. It's actually hard for me to think of. I think one of the earliest, like the biggest, like early one was at the time when Bench was kind of big and like we had the bench in the mall. And so I worked with them on like a monthly basis to do a blog post featuring them and an Instagram post. And when you're starting out, it's hard. You're like, okay, is the brand going to actually like what I'm doing. But you have to keep in mind, like when a brand is reaching out to you, they know your vibe, they know your aesthetic, they kind of know what you're about. They vetted you on their end. So as long as it like when you still keep in mind what is organic to me and what's authentic to me, then creating content through that lens makes it easier, because sometimes it's easy to get in your head and be like, is this exactly what the brand wants? But at the end of the day, they want what you're giving your audience organically, but just featuring their product.
Yeah, and those are some good keywords: authenticity. You said organically, just kind of knowing who you are as an individual and what your style is, so your kind of aesthetic and your brand voice. And then, like you say, you've been you've been vetted on one end. Now
Mm-hmm.
just kind of tweak or tailor what you do for that one specific brand. Interesting. Okay. And maybe we'll have just this one more question. We have Kamal. Any insight on the best times to post? And do you often consider the algorithm when posting or picking hashtags, etc.?
I feel like Instagram is kind of all over the place. They like change the algorithm when they want. There's people who talk about shadow banning and all that stuff. Um, I used to consistently post at like 9 p.m. every day. Now it's kind of all over the place. I'm like, okay, maybe I'll post at noon and people are on their lunch break. But also the algorithm has changed where it used to be time-based content, right? So like 9 p.m. made sense because I was like, everyone's on their couch, my post is going to come up and people are probably on their phones. Then when it changed to a random order of just like based on the algorithm, it didn't really matter if I was posting at 9 p.m. anymore, because if the content was going to resonate with the audience according to Instagram, it'd show up on their feed either way. So I usually stick to like weekends, first thing in the morning. I usually don't really post in the afternoon, or like on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday evening, not too much. And then weekdays, I'll either post like first thing in the morning, noon, or like in the evening. That's kind of where I stay. And then in terms of hashtags, with LN Studio, we actually got a lot of good exposure through hashtags. So it's just about digging and being like, okay, what is this post, and like what's a hashtag that was used, and then who else is posting with this hashtag, and what hashtags are they using. You just kind of have to like take hashtags from a bunch of other people and just see what works. And with Instagram, there's so much analytics about all of that, where you can really see like the percentage of audience that saw your post through hashtags. So yeah, hashtags still do work for a lot of industries, and even with influencers. Like at one point, the hashtag like French vibes, like Parisian vibes, all that stuff was huge, and like everyone was using that, and a lot of people gained a really big audience just through hashtags. So they still work. You just need to find the ones that make sense for your brand.
Interesting. Cool. Cool. And I was thinking, sorry, going back just for a second to
Mhm.
the first thing you said there about being strategic about timing, and now what the algorithm once was, where it was, okay, you post at 9 p.m. on a Friday night and it shows up right then and there in users' feeds at 9 p.m. on a Friday night. And it makes sense. Everyone's on their couch scrolling through Instagram. But now it's much more random. And I think that's interesting too, to think about other platforms. So the platform I am most familiar with, or the world that I'm most familiar with, is the world of podcasting. And the recommendation is to have your content release, and there's ways to auto release your content, so you don't have to be up at 5 a.m. on a Monday morning. But in terms of being able to engage an audience that much better, 5 a.m. on a Monday morning is when you should do it, because that's when automatically it will be pushed to the podcast directories like Apple Podcasts and Spotify and all the rest of those. And why? Because people are, well, before the pandemic, but people are commuting to work on a Monday morning, listening to a podcast. So therefore, it makes sense as a podcast content creator to release your content at strategic time still. But yeah, so it's just very interesting, the conversation around timing in particular.
Yeah.
Cool. All
Awesome.
right. Thanks, Margot.
Thank you. This was
It's
great.
it's been a slice. Yeah, this is great. So let's now, as a class, let's take 10 minutes for a break. We'll come back and we'll tackle some of the more technical topics in the world of accessibility and copyright when it comes to digital campaigns. All right, take 10, everybody. Thanks, Margot.
Thank you.
Welcome back, everybody. And today we're going to continue our chat all about digital strategy and digital kind of content creation and thinking about digital marketing, creativity, all of those things. Because, again, digital and print work together. They work and live together in our current society in 2021. So I wanted to start with a little book. Shall we? Should we read a book? I love kids' books, always have. But I think this is a really good one to get the conversation started. So here we go. And maybe I'll stop sharing my screen for this so you can make me large if you wish. Let's do that. Okay. I am a story. I am a story. I am a story. I was told around a campfire, then painted on cave walls. I was carved onto clay tablets and told in pictures. My green screen is, whoa. I was written on papyrus and printed with ink and wood blocks, then woven onto tapestries and copied into big books to illuminate minds. Ooh, and there's the green screen again. There we go. Ooh, we might recognize this one. I was printed and bound and then acted out on stage. I was read in vast private libraries, then in public libraries, open to everyone, and in places you'd never imagine. I made people frightened, excited, sad, and happy. I was censored and burned, but I did not die. I have inspired millions. I can go with you everywhere and will live forever. I am a story. So I love this book by Dan Yaccarino, and I think it very beautifully illustrates that we are all stories. We all have stories to tell, and whether that's on behalf of our personal selves or whether that's on behalf of brands and other companies, and in the work that we do, there are all sorts of stories to be told, even in this age, or maybe more so in this age of digital engagement. Stories are as old as time. Before we could write, before we could do anything that resembled printing and copying that written text, there were stories that were told around a campfire, and so on and so forth. So I think storytelling is making a huge comeback. It's always been there, of course, but storytelling is making a huge comeback as a way to connect with an audience. In our very, very busy worlds, in our kind of saturated worlds where we are inundated with so much all the time, visual stimuli, content, it's coming at us all the time through various mediums. I think a good story, a story that kind of helps us connect emotionally to that other individual on the other side of the screen, is a massive, and important strategy in the world of creating any sort of content. All right, let me share my screen again. Oh, sorry, just one sec. My apologies. There we go. Oops, that's not what I want. There we go. Digital stories. So let's speak specifically about digital stories for a second. Now, in the last day or two, can you think of a powerful story that was told via social media? So take a second. think about that question. In the last day or two, can you think of a powerful story that was told through some sort of social media, whether that be Instagram or Twitter or TikTok or Facebook or can you think about a powerful story? And what I want everyone to do, I'm going to share a link to a shared document in the chat. So what I would like everyone to do, and I invite you right now, is there we go, is to head over to that Google Doc. And what I want to do right now is collaboratively kind of co-create or build some kind of share our resources when it comes to places where we can find these stories. So let me just, I've got way too many things open on my screen. Just a sec, everybody. There we go. We see everybody flooding in. This is great. So what I would like you to do is not necessarily type out the story itself. Thank you, Jeremiah. You can, yeah, there we go. What you can do is not necessarily type out the story itself, but what account did it come from? And I have mentioned here that we're looking for Instagram just because that's our focus today, is looking at Instagram specifically, because obviously this is a huge topic that is very multifaceted. So whether on Instagram or elsewhere, do you have an account that you like to follow that provides you with these inspirational or kind of interesting stories that are captivating? So for example, for me, I really, really love Humans of New York. Honey, Humans of New York is a really good one for me on that I really enjoy reading and looking through on Instagram. So let's just take maybe 3 minutes and feel free to contribute. There's no obligation to do this, but feel free to contribute and share with us some of your favorite Instagram accounts under some of these categories that tell great stories. Okay, so take about 2 or 3 minutes and let's see what we can get. All right, we have a few in here. I see some kind of popping up and leaving again. Kindly do not delete anything that someone else has put in there. I would appreciate that. All right, so we're kind of getting there, somewhat. Awesome. So feel free to keep adding to this if you wish. Yeah, some good news. I like that as well. That's with John Krasinski. That's awesome. So feel free to add to this. But I just thought this would be a really good place to kind of share some of those accounts that do a really great job telling a story online. So feel free to keep adding to that. But I'm going to go back here and kind of finish up my thought. So when it comes to storytelling and content creation, the reason that we're talking about this is storytelling, again, is such a fundamental skill. And in this crowded world of digital marketing, we want to connect on an emotional level with the audience. So it's something that we've been doing for centuries, but it is something that has become so much more important because of just, again, that sheer volume of content that comes at us each and every day. So stories can be told through, of course, text only, but they can also be told through pictures and through memes. There's whole kind of worlds and communities who share memes and GIFs and kind of relate to one another and relate to the world through all of these interesting digital storytelling tools that are either just very, very short snippets or very long text-based blogs and the like. So it's just something to keep in mind, thinking about those platforms, those people, those individuals who are able to evoke emotion, whatever that emotion might be. This is an interesting kind of, it's interesting to study what they do and how they do it, because storytelling is such a powerful tool and a powerful medium in this busy, crowded space. So the other thing I want to chat about, here we go, is copyright. So there is an assignment, or I shouldn't say assignment, but it's part of your Module 3 workbook, and there is a specific task that you are being asked to do. I will get into that specific task in just a minute, but first I want to chat about copyright and then about accessibility, because those two things play into this final assignment or final piece that you're being asked to do as part of your Module 3 workbook. So Copyright 101, really interesting stuff. I know it sounds a little bit boring, but I promise you it's interesting. And as you can see by those Mickey ears at the bottom, Mickey Mouse has a lot to do with the world of copyright, believe it or not. In fact, I would argue, and many would argue, that Mickey Mouse has shaped and is continuing to shape copyright law, which is very, very interesting. So let's have a look at this short video to see what the heck this is all about.
One of the world's most recognizable characters, Mickey Mouse, is also one of the driving forces behind copyright law, specifically how long copyrights can last for. Almost all pop culture that came before Mickey, The Yellow Kid, Huckleberry Finn, Charlie Chaplin's movies, are in the public domain. But everything after, Goofy, Bugs Bunny, the Ninja Turtles, Luke Skywalker, as long as Mickey stays protected, they're protected as well, as long as they exercise their renewal options. Back when Mickey first appeared in 1928's Steamboat Willie, copyright gave creators rights to their work for 28 years, along with an option to renew for another 28. After that time passed, creative works would enter the public domain, free for anyone to use. Based on that law, the world's most famous mouse should have entered the public domain in 1984. Obviously, that never happened. In 1976, with 8 years left on the Mickey copyright and under significant pressure from Disney, Congress passed a new Copyright Act. Part of the act established that if a work was not yet in the public domain and still protected under the old law, its copyright protection now lasted 75 years instead of 56. Under that new law, the copyright on Mickey Mouse would now expire in 2003. However, in the mid-90s, Disney began to heavily lobby Congress to extend the law even more. Then CEO Michael Eisner was even spotted at the offices of various congressmen. He was very much interested in seeing the copyright bill. I think we need to do it. I agree with him. Then House Speaker Trent Lott would later say of Eisner in an interview with Congressional Quarterly. And in 1998, with only 5 years left on the rights to Mickey, Congress passed and President Clinton signed the Copyright Term Extension Act. The new act extended copyrights even more. If something was made in 1923 or after and still protected by copyright in 1998, it would not enter the public domain until 2019 or later. One law professor we spoke with, Christopher Sprigman at NYU, told us that, quote, traditionally the Walt Disney Company has been very good at convincing Congress to do what they want, end quote. As recently as 2008, brand experts estimated Mickey's value to the Walt Disney Company at $3 billion. With only 8 years left on Disney's Mickey rights, there's a good chance a new bill could appear in Congress in the next few years. After all, it's in the interest of anyone holding a copyright, Warner Brothers, Viacom, NBC Universal, to never let the term on Disney's mouse expire. As goes Mickey, so goes everything else. The irony in all this? A multitude of Disney's biggest hits, Cinderella, Pinocchio, Aladdin, and many others, were all adapted from the public domain.
Interesting, right? Super, super interesting. So Mickey Mouse has shaped and continues to shape copyright law for the reasons in that video. And something kind of ironic and funny, because this is being recorded, this lecture is being recorded, and I showed that video, I'm going to have a copyright flag in my YouTube post. So it'll still allow me to post it and you'll still be able to watch it, but it will say you will never be able to make money from this because the content that you shared is under copyright. So it's kind of this inception of copyright right now. All is to say, let's have a look at what copyright means. So copyright simply means it's a protection of creative work. So any sort of photograph, the examples here, photograph, drawing, piece of writing, audiovisual production, this lecture included, this is copyrighted work, sound recordings, musical works, all of these things and more, any sort of creative work is copyrighted. And what happens is the creator of the work automatically owns that copyright. So you don't have to file for copyright. As soon as you post something to Instagram that you made, as soon as you post a blog post, as soon as you throw a photo up online, whatever it is that is your creation, you own the copyright. So there's no registration required. However, some companies choose to register their copyrights as an extra layer of protection if it's very vital to their brand, like the world of Mickey Mouse. Now, the reason the Disney Corporation does not want Mickey Mouse in the public domain is why? Why do you think, in the chat, why do you think that Mickey Mouse, that the Disney company does not want Mickey Mouse in the public domain? Yeah, too valuable, but why? Why? So Peter's getting to it. Anyone can use Mickey in any way they want. Yeah, I could produce a book. I could write a book that stars Mickey Mouse with images and with with text and using the name and all of the imagery, and no one could stop me, right? So yeah, it's okay. Good, you guys are getting this. Good. Yeah, they don't want anyone else using their mascot. Exactly. So if you think about it from a few different perspectives, Nicole's saying it would tarnish their brand image potentially if people are using this in a way that is not using Mickey Mouse in a way that is not does not fit with their brand, right? Or they're losing out on the opportunity and the revenue that could be generated from products that maybe someone else is now creating with Mickey Mouse and all of that history and time and branding behind Mickey Mouse. Someone is profiting from that. Yeah, so it's very interesting. It's really, really interesting. Okay, something else to note. Something else to note here. Copyright law does not protect ideas. And I think this is very interesting. So what I mean by that is, an idea that has not yet been expressed. So if you have an idea for, I don't know, a self-driving car. The concept of self-driving cars is not something that can be copyrighted. However, if Google is developing their own version, they're kind of making that idea come to life, they can copyright their version of that idea. So they can copyright the actual self-driving car that they create. And I mean, there's a lot of other components there about trademarking and patent protection and all sorts of more complicated things. But in terms of copyright, it's important to note that an idea cannot be copyrighted, but the expression of that idea, the actual artifact, the creative product of that idea is what can be copyrighted. Furthermore, finally, enforcement is left to you. So if someone decides to steal an image that is yours, a photograph that you took, and they I don't know, use it all over their social media, it is ultimately up to you to enforce the law. So if someone steals your work, you have to go to court, you have to prove that it's yours. So is it worth the time and effort in most cases? Maybe not, but there are certain situations where certainly for certain brands and for certain assets, yeah, absolutely, it would make a lot of sense for the owner to go to court. Oh, sorry, there's my dog. Awesome. And just a quick note here. So in Canada, so in that video, it was a little bit different because it was the US, but in Canada, copyright lasts for the life of the author or the creator. And then the remainder of the calendar year in which that author dies. This is quite morbid, but then 50 years after that. So if someone, for example, if there was an author of the work or a photographer, let's make it simple. They died in, I don't know, January 1949. So that author, no matter when they actually took the photo or made the work, no matter when that happened, if it was in the 40s, 30s, 20s, whatever, if that individual, let's say, died in January 1949, the copyright in Canada would extend to December 31st, 1949, and then 50 years after that. So technically speaking, when the clock strikes 12 at the turn of the millennium, that copyright is done. And what that means ultimately then is that work moves into the public domain, which we're going to talk about. And there are ways in which we can use work in the public domain to create our content these days in a very legal way. So all is to say, copyright in Canada is the life of the author plus 50 years. We have a question in the chat. Okay, so can someone claim it right after? So here's the thing. Copyright after it is done. So again, that author, let's say their copyright's up 1999, all done. And once it enters the public domain, nobody owns it. It's free for the taking, which is why we see in a different context or in a different example, oftentimes we see these remakes of like old classic series. So Sherlock Holmes, let's say. So Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, there we go, the author of Sherlock Holmes. Most of the works of Sherlock Holmes are in the public domain. So what that means is that any production company, any publisher, anyone in the world can pick up one of those books, one of those completed works of fiction, and use it however they wish. So it becomes part of the public domain. Everyone has access to it. All right. But here's something interesting. The plot thickens. So I was kind of diving into this. That video is a few years old that you just saw in regards to Mickey Mouse and copyright. But what's kind of interesting here is that a company like Disney enjoys several layers of legal protection for a character as big as Mickey Mouse. So it owns the copyright to the original character, and it also owns the copyright to more recent versions of the character. So what's interesting is that this Mickey is in danger of losing its copyright protections, but this Mickey still has years. So just because it's the same character, it is a different version of that character. So it's protected in a different way in that the copyright has been extended because this is obviously a more modern version. So it's just kind of interesting that I'm not a lawyer by any means, obviously. However, it's interesting to think about copyright in that way, that the exact same character can be copyrighted in different ways, or different timelines, I should say. Okay, so let's think about images. This is more relevant to what we're doing in our course. And I would argue in every course that you take, whereby you have to create content or think about creating content or using images in particular. So what not to use? So in any given project that you are using, you should not get in the habit of not using copyrighted images. So what is copyright? Well, we know it's a legal framework to protect creative works. And it is there so that as a creator, as a photographer, as an author, as someone who is creating a painting, a music, whatever it is, it's so that our work is automatically protected. And that's important so that someone can't just steal something and say it's yours, or say it's theirs rather. But that is why copyright is so critical, because each and every one of us want to maintain the rights to our own individual creative works. So how should we make this work or not work? Well, don't use copyright images in your work. So if you go to Google and you search, let's say you want to find an image of a cat, and you search cat image, right? You use the interweb and you search cat image, and all these wonderful cat images come up on Google Images. Very likely, more likely than not, all of them or most of them will be under copyright. So if something doesn't explicitly say this is free for use, it is under copyright. So what I will say though is if you are looking for that cat image, you can go to services like Shutterstock, is a stock image site that has all of these different digital assets, and they allow the purchase of these copyrighted materials for use. So you still have to pay for, or you do have to pay for them, but you're paying for the permission to use them. Oftentimes there's limitations on how and when they are used. If we get into things like royalties, then there might be, let's say from 1 to 100 copies that you're printing, maybe you're charged this much royalty, and then above that you're charged an additional fee. So, it can get very complicated. But all is to say, when you are thinking about creating content, especially for a brand, for another company, you do not want to use copyrighted images. So there are other options that we will get into in just a second, but this is really critical. Do not just go to Google, type in your keyword search, and then grab the first image. That is not allowed, not okay. Now, you might also find it a little bit ironic, perhaps, that I'm using some images like this one that chances are is under, well, it's copyrighted. We know it's Mickey. So how does that work then? How can I use it in my presentation? Well, in the world of education, and as a student as well, this applies to you, so students and educators, we kind of fall into this weird kind of middle gray area called fair use. So aside from the project that you're going to be working on for this week in our course, kind of looking adjacent to that, in the world of just academia, in the world of being a student and being an educator, we can actually use copyrighted images, but we have to attribute them. So we have to say, this is where I got it. So whether it's simply providing a link, or if your instructor has asked for specific, like we do, for specific APA referencing, something like that, they need to be sourced back to the original source or attributed back to the original source. So that is why I am allowed to use Mickey right here, because I have said I got it right here, and therefore I can put this image in my slide deck. But if I was creating content for, I don't know, like Margot said, for Bench, right? The clothing brand Bench, I'm certainly not going to get Mickey anywhere near their feed. That could potentially just blow up in terms of lawsuits and protecting that copyright, because they can't use Mickey. Okay. Next, so we have the copyrighted images, which we do not want to use. We do not want to use. But what are some other options? So if we do want to use images for our own personal use, or for our schoolwork, or for a client, what can we use? Well, there is this wonderful thing called Creative Commons, and I believe they just turned 20. Yay, Creative Commons. And Creative Commons is this incredible framework. It's a legal framework for better sharing or greater sharing of content online. So I have a short video queued up that kind of gives us an overview of what the heck Creative Commons is. And some of you may have seen this in other places, maybe even in high school or other courses or programs, but this is a really incredible resource that I want to put on your radar right here and right now. So let's have a look what Creative Commons is all about.
Have you ever wondered how to download and share digital content legally? How do you let people know that you want them to reuse your own work? Creative Commons licenses can help you do both. We'll show you how. Our world's exploded with digital opportunities. Now we can communicate, share, and work together using the exceptional distribution network that is the internet. Information and content can fly between us in exciting new ways. But it's important to know that when something is created, say a photo, a document, or a music track, it's automatically protected by copyright. Copyright enables people to say who can share and reuse their creations. You must always obtain someone's permission before sharing or reusing their work, even when it's posted online. But what if a creator wants everyone to use their work, without the hassle of granting permission over and over? This is where Creative Commons can help. Creative Commons provides licensing tools that are free to use. You can apply a license to your work, which refines your copyright and streamlines how you give permission. Zach here downloads a photo called CC Kiwi that he wants to use in his science project. He can do this without asking Kiri, the photographer, first, because she's already given permission with a Creative Commons license. Kiri's license is legally robust, but easy for Zach to understand. She's told the world, including Zach, that they can use CC Kiwi as long as they acknowledge her as the original photographer. There are more rules Kiri could have included. Creative Commons licenses are made up of license elements. You can think of them as rules, and each have their own special symbol. This is attribution. It means that Zach must acknowledge Kiri when he publishes his science project containing her photo. This is non-commercial. It means no one else but Kiri is permitted to make money from CC Kiwi. Tim wants to print the photo onto t-shirts and distribute them to friends. He can do this, but he must not sell them. This is no derivatives, and it means that Kiri hasn't given permission to change her photo. Kate can use CC Kiwi on her design blog, but will need to ask Kiri before retouching or mixing up the image. And this is share alike. It means new creations that use CC Kiwi need to carry the same license. Jack incorporates his own remix of CC Kiwi in his video installation, but he must share the work under the same terms that Kiri has. Each Creative Commons license gives permission to share and includes the attribution rule. So people who find your Creative Commons licensed work are automatically allowed to share it, but are required to acknowledge you if they do. The other 3 license elements are optional, and you can choose which ones to add, if any. Here are the 6 combinations that make up Creative Commons licenses. The difference between them is how many rules apply when someone wishes to use your work. The attribution license allows reusers the most freedom, and the attribution non-commercial no derivatives license allows the least freedom. The attribution license and the attribution share alike licenses are sometimes referred to as free cultural works approved licenses. These 3 licenses restrict commercial use of a work. And these 2 licenses do not give permission for adapting or remixing. These 2 licenses require new works to be licensed under the same terms. To choose and apply one of these licenses, and to view their terms in more detail, visit us at creativecommons.org.nz. Or you can answer.
So pretty neat. I think it's incredible that there's this framework, this really, as they said, robust legal framework that exists, whereby if you do want to share your stuff with the world or you want people to use it, they don't need this very restricted copyright that is automatically granted, but instead you can say, no, I want you to use it. Go ahead, please use my image, my music, my whatever. And so long as that you attribute that back to me, you give me credit where credit is due. And then as the video went into, there are the kind of different modules or different kind of pieces that you can mix and match depending on your specific project and kind of what your beliefs are. So if you don't care if someone breaks apart your image, they can create a derivative, they can create something new from what you have that's different, that breaks apart what you had. By all means, let them do it. Or if you don't, you can say no derivatives. Or if the commercial side of things, if you say, please use this for personal use only, you can specify non-commercial. Or if you say, yeah, I don't care, stick it on a t-shirt, sell it. Or you can use this in a print campaign that is being blasted around the world or some sort of digital campaign. By all means, right? So there is that option as well. So I just think it's such a neat, collaborative kind of framework that just opens up the ways in which we can freely and easily use content online. So here's a really great diagram, and this is the public domain, which we'll get to in just a sec. And you can just basically, if something's in the public domain, you can do anything. You don't even need to attribute the author. Although it is good practice, it is a nice thing to do to attribute the author. But then below that are all the Creative Commons licenses. And at the very least, what Creative Commons asks you to do is attribute the author. That is critical. That is a key kind of cornerstone of the legislation, is that, sure, you can use this, but you need to say where you got it from or who the original creator was. All right. Kind of cool. I was first introduced to Creative Commons when I did my master's degree, and I started that in 2013, and it was all about communications and technology. And this whole world of Creative Commons opened up to me, and I was like, this exists? This is incredible. So do take advantage of this. Now, where do you actually find Creative Commons? Well, Creative Commons can be found right here, creativecommons.org. Let me go over here. Haha, there it is. So creativecommons.org. So if you are trying to find an image for a project for your course, coursework, or for, again, some client work that you're doing or personal work, whatever it is, you can search. So I can say, I want a cat. I have not vetted this. I have no idea what's going to pop up. This is probably not the best idea. Okay, there is apparently nothing. Okay, let's try a different one. What should we search for? Let's search for elephant. Okay, well, this may be, let's try this again. Is this my internet? There we go. Okay, so we've got some photos of elephants in this case. Fantastic. So we can actually kind of filter our results based on if we know how we want to use this. So let's say I do want to use this in a campaign that will be for profit. I'm using it on a company. Whoa. Okay, well, it's a little glitchy, but I'm using this for a campaign for a company that is doing some sort of elephant rescue initiative. So I know that this is going to be potentially a for-profit campaign. This is something that will be bringing in money. So I want to, for example, say I need, let's see. I need, which one is this? Here we go. So you can click here. Okay, so no derivatives or adaptations, non-commercial uses only. So I want one that is free and open. So all I want is something that all I need to do is credit the creator. Let's have a look. This is really slow. I'm not sure why. This is a little painful. There we go. Okay, elephants. Look at this. This is a great image. So when we go to use this image, we can, well, the image is not there at the moment, but this is a little glitchy right now. But let's say the image is there. We can then download the high-res version of that image and use it in any way we want, so long as we attribute the original author. And the way that we can attribute the original author, we can credit the creator in a few different ways. But look at this. Okay, this is not working. Let's click on this guy. Nope. Come on, Creative Commons. I'm trying to sell you here. Big sell, big push. Okay, it's being glitchy. That's fine. I'm not going to try and push this. All is to say that this right here, it's not populating right now because the image isn't showing up for some reason. But in order to attribute that original creator, it's very, very simply, oh, yay. Okay, we saw it change right there, which is kind of cool. We see here, this is how we attribute Creative Commons. And in D2L this week, there are lots of resources to show you how to do this as well. So, but the very simple version is, okay, so you find an image that has the license that you want. And in this case, I know again that this is going to be a campaign that is for profit. So I need to make sure that the license doesn't restrict that, doesn't restrict making money from this. And then I can download the image, right? And I can then copy this plain text, and this is what I can put into my, in this case, social media post all about elephants. I would put this at the end to say elephants, that's what this photograph is called, by this user, this person, McLaughlin, licensed by the Creative Commons, no derivatives 2.0, and then it links directly to what that license means. Cool, eh? So it's really, really straightforward. It's really simple to use this database. And there are all sorts of creative assets. Some are a little more professional than others, but typically what I found is very high quality content and images there. So that is a great resource that you can use, again, professionally, personally. I love it. And then let's get into the public domain, because this is where things get interesting. So public domain is essentially a legal framework for sharing digital content for free. Anyone can use it. And it is either someone whose copyright has expired, so the situation we spoke about before, or a creator, someone who is, again, a photographer, or who creates art, digital art, or someone who does write specific text. I can't think of a text example. Doesn't matter. All is to say that someone can intentionally say, yes, please use this. It's not even protected under Creative Commons. You can just freely use this. It is in the public domain for anyone to use any way they wish. You don't even have to credit the author. Again, it's best practice to credit the author always. But that's kind of neat. And there's two websites here in particular that I think are incredible resources for you for any project. The first one is this, Pexels. I don't know if Jay has already mentioned this in 130, so I will not go into too much detail, but Pexels, free stock photography that is in the public domain. So cool. So it's really high quality, beautiful, curated, styled, edited photography, and we can use it for free. So you can download it for free. It shows you who created it. It even gives you, in this case, some metadata and interesting stuff here. The color palette, like really interesting stuff. And all you have to do, actually you don't even have to, you can just use this freely without even crediting the author. Now, if I go to download this, it will say, hey, our creators love hearing from you and seeing how you've used their photos, so show some appreciation by doing the following. And then you can also create a link back to the photo, which I do recommend. And for your assignment, please do, to that original source. So if you copy that, super simple, and you paste it into your Instagram caption, which more on that in a minute. But this is how you can do that. So simple, so simple. Any questions so far? So if you have any questions, type them in the chat, certainly. But this is another one, and I use this one all the time. So Unsplash is so cool. Same thing as Pexels, in that it's free, copyright free, and monetarily free stock photography. And it has a really robust search capability. And again, it's really highly curated stuff, really beautiful pictures. And the thing is, you can click here and you can start to kind of build for photographers, they can make themselves a little more well known, because it will actually say, hey, this person doesn't look like they do, but it will say that available for hire. So if I am a brand, if I'm a company and I am looking at the same image keeps coming up for me, or I really like the style of this photographer's work or something like that, there's a way to go back and actually connect with this individual and hire them and bring them on. So this work almost becomes like an online portfolio that the world can use for free, which is incredible, which is like a huge, huge resource that you have in the palm of your hands. Okay. Let's see. I think I went through all that. Great. Now, what I do want to mention here, ooh, look at that highly pixelated image. That was gross. It didn't look that bad on my screen when it was teeny tiny. In any case, royalty free, however, does not mean copyright free. So this is just another term. It's a legal term, but it's something to keep in mind when you're thinking about choosing photos and kind of being cognizant of what these terms mean. So we know that copyright free means that something is in the public domain, or it could be a Creative Commons licensed asset. But royalty free is a little bit different. So let me explain this, and this is in quotations. This is the legal jargon. So royalty-free is the right to use copyrighted material or intellectual property without the need to pay royalties or license fees for each use or per volume sold or some time period or use of sales. In other words, in plain terminology, royalty-free means that you don't have to pay per click or pay per song or pay per use of that song, which in a lot of cases, that is the kind of the structure of the payment structure of that specific digital asset. So one thing that comes to mind is in the world of book printing and publishing. So in book printing and publishing, all the time we hear about authors receiving royalties for their work. And they do, right? So it's typically, let's say, around 8%, 5 to 10%, somewhere in there, of the cost of the sticker price of that book. So it's $20. So then 5%, oh boy. Wait, let's do this. $10 book, 5% is 50 cents. That math works, right? So for every book sold, 50 cents would go to the author. That is their royalty. They are receiving a royalty for every single book sold. A lot of other creative assets work the same way. But if you are using a royalty-free image, it doesn't mean that it's copyright-free. It just means that you don't have to pay per use. It could be still, though, that you have to pay to use it at all. So that's a one-time fee to say, yep, you have permission. You have the ability to use this copyrighted image, but you don't have to pay every time you use it. So copyright may be a one-time payment in the case of like Shutterstock or another stock photography site, right? Shutterstock. Right, so, okay. Everything's just working so well today. There we go. Shutterstock may be that, so in this case, a subscription model, or you pay per image or per video, but it may be that it is a royalty-free image or video. So you're only paying that one time to say, yes, you can use this copyrighted image, but and there's no royalties, so you don't have to keep paying. But if an image does have royalties, watch out, because every time you use that image, there may very well be a cost to doing so. So just something to keep in mind. Royalty-free, copyright-free, not the same thing. Okay, let's take another just 5-minute break before we come back and tackle this world of accessibility. And when we come back, we will also have a look at the kind of mini assignment or thing that we're asking you to do for this week in the Module 3 workbook. And it will all kind of, it'll pull together all of what we've been talking about today, and it will make, hopefully, a lot more sense how you can use this information. So take 5 minutes, come on back at 5:01, where we will talk accessibility. 5:01. We are. So there's a whole lot to tackle in the world of accessibility when it comes to digital content and digital documents. So I had the unique opportunity, I think it was 2017 or 2018, to help co-develop and kind of create our accessibility for graphic communications course that we offer in our school. And it was this really incredible opportunity, and there was lots of research and lots of kind of learning that I did at that point to build this course. And I haven't touched it for a while. So I felt like I was a little bit out of practice and out of the loop as to what's happening in accessibility. So I recently, just a month or two ago, finished up a podcast series all about accessibility in graphic communications. Excuse me. And so I spoke to persons with disabilities. I spoke to people and persons who are allies and advocates for people who are for persons with disabilities. And all of these people, kind of the connecting factor through all of them, they are using their creative leadership to make the world a more inclusive place. So it was this really awesome opportunity to chat with some really kind of fundamentally important people in the world of graphic communication and accessibility. All is to say that one important thing to note is something called the AODA. So the AODA is the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. And this legislation was back in 2005 when you guys were just probably still crawling around as toddlers. And the goal was to enable a fully accessible Ontario by January 1st, 2025. And that date is quickly approaching. I mean, we are like 4 years away from, less than 4 years, 3 and a bit years away from that actual date. So there are lots and lots of components of AODA that are important to note. Oftentimes, if you work for a big employer like Ryerson University, you actually have to take AODA training and pass an AODA test in order to work for the university in any capacity. So it's essentially, how do we break down barriers for people, for persons with disabilities, and what does that look like in the realm of communications, in the realm of spaces, in the realm of digital technology, and so on and so forth. So there's lots and lots and lots of information contained within the AODA, but all of it is to do with removing as many barriers as possible in all facets of life for those living with disabilities, various disabilities. I also wanted to share, just as kind of a precursor to what we are going to speak about, which is very particular accessibility tools within Instagram in particular. These kind of models, different models of disability. So there's the medical model, and then the social model of disability. And you can see in this diagram, or this kind of graphic at the bottom, this is kind of a really illustrative visual way to understand these two models. So we have this individual who's in a wheelchair. It says, "Weigh in, everyone welcome." But of course there's stairs, so everyone is not really that welcome. The medical model of disability says her impairment is the problem. They should cure her or give her prosthetics. right? So it's trying to fix the individual versus the social model of disability, which says the stairs are the problem. They should build a ramp. So therefore, the message is flipped, whereby it's not the individual who is disabled, it is the environment that is disabling. So how do we change the environment? How do we reduce barriers in a digital environment as well as a physical environment so that everyone is truly welcome and we can encourage as many people as possible to this given space, whatever that looks like. So just things to keep in the back of your mind as we go through today. All right. This resource is my favorite. This thing is awesome. So this is the second edition, and as you can see, it is revised and supersized second edition, but this is called, obviously, Accessibility 2, a practical handbook on accessible graphic design. There's so much more to accessibility than just graphic design, and same with our program, so much more to it than just graphic design, but this is a great starting point. So this, I'm going to pop the PDF, the link to the PDF in the chat. It is available to everybody free of charge. And it's just a resource to have in your back pocket as a really great go-to to learn about some of these topics. And if you have a specific project or if this is something that interests you, this is an incredible guide that I highly recommend you have a look at. Okay, so a couple of things here. One of the things in this guide and also in a podcast episode that I recently recorded, we talk about alt text, so alternative text. If we're talking and thinking about ways in which we can remove barriers in a social media space, in a digital space, alternative text is like the best thing, the simplest first thing we could do. So alt text is really just a description of an image on screen. That's simply what it is. So if, for example, this is my image, and this is a post, I just grabbed this. This is something I did recently. This is my post on Instagram. Oops. There we go. So this, the alt text for this says podcast episode art that contains the text, episode 76, All Things Letraset with Jonathan Vallely, on a blue background with half of a yellow paper boat. So if someone could not view this, so they perhaps had vision impairment or there was some other barrier to them being able to see this fully, what they could do is they could use an assistive technology like a screen reader that actually reads aloud what the description would be. And that screen reader would say, podcast episode art that contains da-da-da-da-da, right? It would actually read the description. So this alternative text, or what we call alt text, oftentimes, or should be more often than not, embedded into an image in Instagram. And I'm going to show you how to do that because this is part of what we're asking you to do this week. Now, before I show you how to do it, if you've never heard a screen reader reading aloud text on a computer before, it is a fascinating thing. It is so incredible to hear how this assistive technology, oftentimes built right into the operating system on a Mac or a PC, how it actually reads aloud content on a screen. And so in one of my other episodes, I just wanted to share with you this audio. It's a short audio of Kevin Shaw. So Kevin Shaw is a really, really interesting guy he's a kind of a serial entrepreneur. He does lots of interesting work in the realm of vision impairment and helping to, again, create apps and assistive technologies and rethink the way that we remove barriers. So he's a great resource, but he relies on a screen reader entirely. So he has no vision whatsoever. He's completely blind, and he relies on a screen reader to actually view content online. So have a look or have a listen as to what his screen reader sounds like.
I've got, I'll do it on this one here. I'll flip this around and I'll choose synthetic speech. So I don't talk to the computer talks to me, and I basically just use the keyboard full time to navigate web pages, documents, audio programs, podcast programs, spreadsheet programs, presentation software, basically the entire computer. So I'm just here on the Apple website, and I can navigate by heading.
Apple, iPhone 13 Pro, iPhone 13, Apple Watch Series 7, iPhone 13 Pro.
And I can navigate up and down through these headings. I can just use the tab key and go link by link.
Store, Mac, iPad, iPhone, Watch, iPhone, Apple C80 page has iPhone 13 Pro, iPhone 13. Which iPhone is right for you? Available in Sierra Blue, Silver, Gold, and Graphite. 2 items. New iPhone 13 Pro.
And so that's basically the way that I would use a computer. If I wanted to, let's say, go somewhere else, I could go to my bookmarks menu.
Bookmarks menu. Apple is vertical line accessible apps.
Listen to this a lot faster.
So, sorry, he's just saying there that he'll listen to it a lot faster. So the speed that we're hearing it there is very slow. I mean, we can all understand it, but the way that Kevin listens in his daily life, listens to a screen reader is wild I can't understand what the computer is saying. So let me see if I can find that clip.
Faster?
I was going to say, I remember when you demoed.
Voiceover. Specifically, if you do not currently subscribe to Apple One and go to your subscription screen through the App Store or settings app, and then select the button to view the Apple One bundle options. The text on the page is not read by VoiceOver, and most of the UI elements are either unlabeled or have meaningless labels.
So that's kind of a.
So that's how he uses his screen reader, which to me is, again, it's so mind-boggling to me that he can hear it that fast and understand it that fast. And he's just using the tab keys on his keyboard. So he's able to navigate websites. Some are more kind of accessible than others, and he can get around in different ways and in different levels of success in one website over another. But it's just interesting to note that this screen reader technology is, if he were to use Instagram, for example, it would be looking for this alt text, this alternative text to describe and give context to the image. So that is what alt text is. All right. Now here are some rules or just ways to think about creating alt text. So if we are creating alt text, here are a few things to keep in mind, and this comes right from that RGD handbook. So alt text should be functional, meaning that it should communicate something very specific to the reader. So the same message, ultimately, that the image is trying to convey, that's what we want to convey in the alt text as well. Now, in terms of relevant, it really should consider the audience. So this could mean describing an image. So for example, an alt text of a company logo might describe what the logo looks like. So maybe it uses specific colors or fonts or whatever. Or maybe it just says, this is Microsoft's logo. This is Apple's logo. So it doesn't necessarily have to describe entirely, like this is a picture of a half-eaten apple and it's silver and it's on this uses this font and whatever. It could just say Apple's logo. So some relevancy and kind of context for the intended audience is important here. And then in terms of embedded text, if there is embedded text inside of an image, and we saw that with, there we go. We saw that here. So it says all things Letraset with Jonathan Vallely. So because this text is inside of my image, Instagram is not going to read that. It's inside of my image and saved as a PNG. Then let's include episode 76, all things Letraset with Jonathan Vallely, in the actual alt text. So do include any embedded text. In terms of length, length is an important one here. 1 or 2 sentences max. It should be concise, clear and concise. Structure. Alt text structure, when you want to think about that, is in terms of a short description to help the user decide whether they want to keep listening or not. Because just as you saw with Kevin, or heard with Kevin using his screen reader, he can just move to the next one. So just like we scroll, he could just click to the next button and not hear the end of that alt text, for example. So if we can structure it in a way that, and some software actually gives us the option of short alt text and long alt text. When I was designing a course, the learning management system that I was using, for every single image I used, I had to include short alt text, like a one-liner, and then long descriptive alt text, so that if someone did want more information, more context, more whatever, they could listen to the long form one if they wanted. So structure can play a big part in this. Objectivity versus subjectivity. So you want to do your best to describe an image in a way that reserves your judgments and opinions. Users should really be given the opportunity to make up their own minds about whatever the content is. So just be as objective as possible. And in any writing, reducing redundancy is a very good thing. So keep in mind that when you're writing your alt text, also just be mindful of whatever content is in your actual caption in the case of Instagram. So there's no need to repeat if that information's already in the caption. Kind of think of the two things, the alt text and the caption text, as two things that work together. So there's no point in kind of creating redundancy if it's not necessary. And speaking of not necessary, reduce or don't include unnecessary words. So things like image of or a link to. You can just say, instead of image of, you can just say woman wearing a hat on a sunny day instead of image of woman wearing a hat on a sunny day. So these kind of, again, trying to get that description down to its core is an important part of this. The final two, while you should aim to not include unnecessary words, do maintain necessary words. And this is an example right from RGD, right from the Association of Registered Graphic Designers, that accessibility to handbook. And I just thought it was such a good example that drives the point home. So I'm going to say it here. So for example, a drawing of the Loch Ness Monster emerging from the water in daylight is very different than a photograph of the Loch Ness Monster emerging from the water in daylight. So while you should not include image of if it changes the context of what the user should be looking at, do include it, right? So a drawing of the Loch Ness Monster and an image of the Loch Ness Monster, two very different things. So know when to include it to, again, create context for your viewer. And finally, finish your alt text with a period. So don't leave the reader hanging. When you insert the appropriate punctuation, it just helps the screen reader know when to pause between elements. So it has that distinct kind of, okay, this is the end of the sentence, move on to the next bit of content. So there it is, the 10 tips for writing effective alt text, which you are going to be doing in your assignment. Now here is, this is kind of a goofy example I pulled up, but this is again these 4 images that were part of kind of a carousel of images that I posted about this specific All Things Letraset episode. So here are some other examples of alt text that I have written recently. So this is the one you've seen on the last slide. This was my guest. So Jonathan Vallely is caught in motion and is seen in profile smiling with a patterned background behind him, right? So that's kind of a fun thing. So you can be fun with it, be descriptive. It doesn't have to be very robotic and kind of static. It can be a little more fun and playful so long as it gets the message across that the original image was trying to convey. And because I know that this audience who is listening to my podcast and potentially listening to this episode does care about things like typography, I also included some information about the typography of the image. So it's one of Jonathan Vallely's Letraset creations that reads So I included the text as well. Broken Pencil Zine Awards, with very tight kerning, that's a type term, of alternating black and white lettering on purple paper. So I know my audience, I know that they will potentially understand, or most will understand this concept of kerning, so I included it in my alt text. And there I am, Diana Varma, holding up a knockoff Letraset dry rub transfer sheet she found at a dollar store, prompted by a conversation between she and Jonathan. So again, it's just bringing back into context what this episode was all about, and hopefully for someone who has an interest in this subject area, who has an interest in this individual, this guest I was interviewing, they would read or listen to these alt text versions and go, oh yeah, I want to listen to this episode. Cool, I will. So it's kind of in a way helping to promote, in my case, a podcast episode. So what I want us all to do right now, before we get into the last few bits of this, I want to see if you can write some alt text. So given all of the information you have been given so far, based on this image you see here, how would you describe it? How would you write the alt text? So take a minute to think about this. Okay, have a look at this image and try to craft something in the chat. A few reminders, keep it concise, be descriptive, reduce unnecessary words, and try and capture the overall feeling or theme of the photo. Let's see if we can do a caption contest, but an alt text caption contest. Okay, so take a minute. When you're ready, populate it in the chat. I'll do one too. Let's see if we can do this. All right, so we got a few coming in. Man sitting down on the edge of a cliff, taking pictures of the surrounding mountains. Yeah, and that's interesting because I interpreted the image as he was taking a selfie, but maybe he's not. Maybe he's got the camera pointed out, and maybe that matters. Maybe if the article, this image that the article is, that let's say it's part of an article, and the article is about not, or being in the present moment, let's say, and therefore that hinges on the fact that this guy's actually taking a selfie and he's not in the present moment, that context matters. Or if he's just, I don't know, let's say the context of the photo is he is taking a picture using a new type of technology that allows you to capture 360-degree view. So that matters as well. So the context of this, yes, would change the actual alt text a little bit. Man in the wilderness taking a selfie of himself sitting on a rock. Yeah, I maybe would reduce the selfie of himself, but minor redundancy I would take out. Mine is not perfect, but it's a start, I think. It could be massaged a little. An individual in a blue shirt, blue hat, and cargo shorts takes a selfie at a high altitude overlooking a mountainscape. We have some more. Man sitting on a cliff, taking a picture of the mountains around him. Yep. Man at the top of a mountain taking a photo of the view. Man sitting on top of a cliff taking photos of the mountains behind him with his cell phone. Man sitting down on a rock near a cliff taking a picture of the mountains. A mountainous forest terrain around him. Good. So I think we all have a fairly good kind of gist of this photo. We all kind of have arrived at similar places. Describing what the individual is wearing may or may not be relevant to this. Again, if we're thinking about this in context, whether he's taking a selfie or taking photo of the surrounding nature, the greater, I mean, that's important. That context is important. So we would include whatever that context is inside of our alt text. Okay, question. Is it good practice to describe the man himself for future reference? Yeah, so I think it can help paint a picture. It doesn't, you don't have to necessarily go into as much detail as I did. So kind of like the blue cargo or the blue shirt, blue hat, cargo shorts, that may or may not be relevant to the audience. If this guy is a fashion blogger and this is like the latest trend, then yeah, that's going to be important. But context is more important than specific rules about describe clothing or don't describe clothing. So overall context of the image. I think, and then Leah's saying, I think if we say it's hot weather, it would paint an image of what he's wearing. No. Yeah, that's another thought too. So it looks like it's a hot day, a summer's day maybe. And so if we paint that picture in someone's mind, then we kind of indirectly describe what he's wearing as well. Unless he's wearing a parka on a hot day, and then it's a whole different context. But it's just, if you can kind of close your eyes and take the general gist of the photo and what the context is and what it looks like, and try and paint that 1 sentence or 2 sentence picture. It's easier said than done. It does take practice, but it is an important skill to cultivate, essentially if you want to, or especially if you want to be in this world of digital marketing. Okay, a couple more things here. And then we're going to wrap up in very short order. So these final 2 things to removing digital barriers, specifically for Instagram, image descriptions are a good thing to think about too. So image descriptions are very similar to alt text. If I go back for a second, I did promise you that I would show you how to do this. So before we go on to the next thing, let me just show you this really quickly. I would like everyone, if you have Instagram, to log into Instagram on your phone. I am giving you permission here now. I am encouraging you to open up Instagram. Try not to get sucked down the hole. Squirrel. Oh man, I do this all the time. I'm like, oh, let's check the weather. And then half an hour later, I'm like, oh boy, what's happened? So in any case, what I would like you to do is go to an image that you have posted. In this case, I'm going to go to that same post that I pulled up before with the Letraset, that episode 76. So open up any post that you ever made on Instagram. And then what you're going to do is up in the top right corner, we have those 3 little dots. And from there, we can edit our photo, or edit our post rather. Okay, so we're going to click on that edit button. Then what you are going to do, once you have your photo, you have clicked the 3 dots and then edit, you will notice, sorry, this is kind of low tech, a little bit silly, but that's okay. You will notice that in the bottom right-hand corner of your actual image, it says edit alt text. Cool, that's how you do it. Really simple. You can actually streamline this a little bit. So if you want to include alt text in your next avocado toast post, you can do it right when you are actually posting to Instagram, but you can also do this after the fact. And again, it's just a matter of going into an image that you want to add alt text, clicking those 3 dots, edit, and then edit alt text. And you can see my alt text for each of those images. So Instagram has become quite, it's easy. It's easy these days. It wasn't always this easy to add alt text for each and every image in a given post. Videos don't need alt text because there's oftentimes, more often than not, there's audio, so there's no need for alt text. It's really just static images. Okay, and that's it. That's how you do it. That is how you add alt text to an image in Instagram. If you are watching this 10 years in the future, maybe Instagram's not even a thing. We're in the metaverse after all. It might be different then, but for now, that's how you do it. So now if we have had a look at alt text, there's also these things called image descriptions. And one of my episodes in the accessibility in graphic communication series, the episode, I can't remember what number it was. Doesn't matter. This is Teresa Mabe. She's awesome. And Teresa Mabe runs this Instagram account called Accessible Influence. And she is this really incredible content creator who is visually impaired. And as she was doing her digital marketing degree in university, that's when her visual impairment started. So she actually was, I believe, fully sighted for the majority of her life and has just recently started losing her vision. But one of the big things that she does is she helps people understand, people like us who create content, understand how to make their information more accessible. And one of the things in conversation with her that I learned is this thing called an image description. So we can see down here at the bottom, she said, Teresa, a white woman, sitting at a computer desk watching a video on her screen. It shows a close-up of holding hands with the words, "The internet is inaccessible." So you can see that this is just alt text. I mean, it can be different from alt text, but oftentimes, and the way that I use this as well, is just the exact same as alt text. So I would put my alt text, kind of embed it into the image the way I just showed you, but I would also include it here in the caption as an image description. What this does, and this is what Teresa taught me, because I asked her, why would you want to put both in there? Does that make sense? And she said, yes, it does, because she said, for those who use a translation service or a translator, when they are looking at something like Instagram. So they are having all of the captions translated into a different language. So auto-translated. However, alt text will always read as English. So alt text embedded into an image reads as English always on a screen reader. Whereas the image description, because it's part of the caption, will also translate into whatever language they are translating all of the text into. So I thought that was such a clever thing to think about. And for me, what I think it also does is it shows the world, hey, I'm committed to this thing called accessibility. I'm committed to reducing barriers wherever I can. So, hey, world, I use image descriptions. I care about this stuff. This is important to me. So alt text is hidden away. You can't really see it at all unless you're using a screen reader, but you can see the image description, which I think helps align a brand or an individual with a movement, accessibility, reducing barriers, the social model of disability, so on and so forth. And then the last piece of our puzzle here is in regards to camel case hashtags. Has anyone ever heard of this before? Because I had not before I learned about Teresa and her work. Anyone know? Camel case? It's kind of cool. So all it means is that when you use hashtags, you are, if the hashtag is a multi-word hashtag, you are capitalizing the first letter of each of those words. So what Teresa explained to me is that when you have all lowercase, so for example here, if I had digital accessibility and it was all lowercase, certain words or strings of words can actually be read as the wrong thing by a screen reader. But if you include this capitalization, the screen reader understands that these are two distinct words, digital accessibility. So camel case just means that if it's a multi-word hashtag, the first letter of each word is capitalized. So it kind of looks like the humps on a camel. That's camel case. And then also, lastly, in regards to hashtagging or including hashtags, include them in the comments. So the algorithms are always changing, as Margot mentioned, and as we all know, the algorithms are a bit of a mystery, but it has been not been proven, or I should say it is still fine if you include hashtags not in the body of your post or of your actual why can't I think of the word? Caption? That's the word. In your caption, instead, include the hashtags as a separate item as a comment. And people will still be able to find your post through it. The hashtag will still be aligned or assigned to your post, but it just makes it so that someone listening to a screen reader doesn't have to hear hashtag design, hashtag print, hashtag printing, hashtag typography, hashtag type, hashtag branding. So the screen reader will skip over the comment section and just move from one post to the next, reading the alt text in the image, the caption, and then alt text in the image, the caption. It skips over the comments. So the person listening to the screen reader does not have to listen to all of this. It's very monotonous, especially with like 30 hashtags or whatever the max is right now. That would be a lot for every single post. So do put them in the comments, do make them this camel case format. Those are some good best practices when we're thinking about removing barriers online. Phew. Okay. How are we feeling? I know it's been a long class. But hopefully you found some interesting information, and it's a bit of a change from what we've been doing, which I think is never a bad thing. So what I would like us to do now is we're going to have a look at what this Module 3 workbook, and specifically what we're asking you to do in week 9, what that looks like. So I am going to pull up that here, but if you'd like to pull it up in front of you or take some notes, you are more than welcome to do so. So it's within our GCM course shell on D2L, or GCM 120 course shell. Let me go here. Module 3 workbook. All right, fantastic. Great, here it is. So this is your Module 3 workbook. And here is what you are being asked to do. So Parks Canada Agency, and this is the same client that Pressed for Time Print Company worked with to help bring the Banff postcards to life. And remember those Banff postcards we printed in Module 2, and we also cut down in Module 2. So the same client, Parks Canada, who runs our National Park Agency. They're looking for our help in creating a digital campaign. So you are going to find and then attribute digital assets that are in the public domain. That should also, public domain, Creative Commons, those are kind of go hand in hand, as well as demonstrating good practices of digital accessibility, all while executing captivating visual storytelling. Phew! So all those pieces that we have thought about today in terms of storytelling, in terms of copyright, in terms of accessibility, and then layered on top of that is all of the interesting insight and experience that Margot brought to that. So thinking about all of this, you're going to put it into action here. Specifically, you're going to create 3 Instagram posts. So photos only, no video. And these are going to specifically be about winter activities that someone could do in a Canadian national park. So things like hiking, cross-country skiing, snowshoeing. And the aim of this mini digital campaign, this kind of 3 Instagram post campaign, is to help attract visitors to one of the parks. You're going to pick one park during these cold winter months when typically Parks Canada sees a drop-off in attendance because it's just cold and miserable and we don't want to be outside. So how do we get people to our parks during the winter? Let's try this campaign. So you are going to select just one Canadian national park. You get to choose. There's a list on this website and this link. And all 3 of your Instagram posts will be about that one park. That's important. You're going to do some research about this park that you have chosen. You're going to do some research about Parks Canada, their visual brand and their brand voice that they currently have on Instagram. Their Instagram platform is fairly massive. I think it's like 500,000 followers, something like that, 514,000 or something followers. It's big. So what does their brand voice and visual identity look like online? So do some research. Part of your homework is to go on Instagram and have a look at Parks Canada and see what they are all about. And then in terms of your 3 photos for each of the one per post, here's what we are asking. 1 photo from a Creative Commons source. We saw the Commons. There's also something called Wikimedia Commons, which is a Creative Commons licensed source as well, or place to find images. 1 photo that is from the public domain. There are no restrictions whatsoever on it. Pexels and Unsplash are 2 beautiful go-to resources for that. And then 1 original photo that you took. So it doesn't have to be of an actual Parks Canada park, but it should look like it kind of could have been taken at that park. So you can kind of, it can be something, or it should be, because we don't have snow yet, but it should be a photo that you maybe have taken in years past and you can use as part of this campaign. Now, the captions you write should lend themselves to the winter activities that you are trying to promote, and your goal here is to creatively integrate the 3 posts. They should not feel siloed or distinct. They should feel like they work together. And you want to ultimately stop the scroll. You want to ultimately get someone to be intrigued or excited or interested or spring into action as a result of looking at these posts. Each post should contain between 100 and 200 words. So any text that you include, like an image description or alt text for accessibility reasons, does not count in this word count. Or hashtags also does not count in this word count. Okay, 100 to 200 words per caption, and those things are not included. As part of the caption, we are also asking, as best practice, that you include a properly sourced or attributed photo credit to each bit of content. So that means in the case of the Creative Commons source that I showed you today, it's just copying and pasting that attribution text and sticking it at the bottom of your post. Or with Pexels or Unsplash, again, that kind of, this is by this photographer from Pexels, or whatever that copy code is. So it's important. Also, attribute yourself. So make sure that you tell people that the third photograph that you choose, that is your original photograph, make sure that your name is on there. You are the photographer, all rights reserved, copyright to you. So that's kind of fun and exciting. So you can either create a mock-up on Instagram if you wish, or and take screenshots, or probably the better strategy I would encourage is to just mock it up in something like Adobe Illustrator, which you know and love at this point, or even just Microsoft Word or Google Docs. So it doesn't have to be super fancy, but it should kind of mimic the look and feel of an Instagram post. Please include all visuals and written components right here in the body of this Module 3 workbook. So please don't submit this as a separate file. Please submit it right here, right? It can obviously go to the next page as well, but please include it in the workbook itself. Good. And then here is a summary. So here's what you need: a description of your strategy. So why did you choose this specific strategy? Why did you choose these images? Why did you choose the park? What was your brain? What were you kind of thinking? What was that thought process, the creative process? Because we cannot be in your brains, tell us what is in there on paper in 200 to 300 words. A mock-up, so whether, again, it's screenshot or kind of an image of how all three photos look together side by side. And then each of the three posts captions and image descriptions or alt text in plain text. And again, these captions should be about 100 to 200 words each over 3 posts. And finally, a reflection. So just a little bit of kind of reflecting on the process of using these images that are free to use, available to use, not copyrighted images, and what it was like to apply these principles of accessibility. Is it useful? Does this change the way you look at other content creators who maybe aren't as aware of accessibility issues or ways to reduce barriers? So that is what we are looking for. And this is how you will be graded. Okay, so that is 2 marks each for each of these pieces. Okay, there's some questions in the chat. Let's have a look. Okay, I'm assuming the love-hate relationship is Illustrator. Good. So question. So the spots are just pictures. No need for any graphic illustrations. Posts. Yes, there we go. That makes more sense. The posts are just pictures. Absolutely. So the images, so you don't need to change the images in any way that you find. If you find a really beautiful, well, yeah, I mean, you can if you wanted to take it the extra level, but yeah, that's not the point of this. So can you create something, remix a current image and make it something new? Sure. But is that what you're being asked to do? Will you get extra marks for that? No. So just choose an image, find an image, curate an image, a series of images that will work for the campaign. For the caption, if we made it in Google Docs, should we just write it underneath the images? Yeah, precisely. Perfect. Leah, stress level high. No, this is fun. This is kind of creative and thinking about digital strategy. And you're probably, maybe not everyone, but spend a lot of time on Instagram and you see what other brands are doing. So how would you apply what you see and what you know and kind of your own creative inputs? How do you apply that to another brand? How do you think through their lens through Parks Canada Agency? What do they do already? How can you add your own creative flair? How do you get someone to stop scrolling? I don't have all the answers, but let's try. Let's figure this out and let's see if we can create something interesting. Aaron is asking, for the alt text, do we just write a subheading in Google Docs saying alt text? Precisely. So you can just tell me this is what the alt text says underneath the image or would say underneath the image. Yeah. Any other questions about this? Hopefully this is kind of fun. Do you have any examples to show us? Well, I'm glad you asked. I actually do have an example of a student's work, and it's kind of funny because it just so happens, and I didn't even really plan it this way, but it kind of worked out beautifully. Jonathan Valelli, who you saw being interviewed, I have his assignment that I thought I'd show you. So he was a student of mine in the Chang School, the CE version of our course. So he did a really incredible job. Their creative brief, their task was a little bit different in that it was not all about winter and getting people to come to the park for the winter, but it was more of a Canada Day promotion. So this is not exactly what is being asked of you, but the thing I really liked about Jonathan's posts, and here you can see here he mocked it up. What I really liked about his posts is when you have a chance to go over and actually look at the brand voice for Parks Canada and see what they stand for and see what they talk about. And even Margot was mentioning emojis, common emojis used. Like he has hit this brand voice and the kind of the structure of this caption. He's hit the nail on the head. So I really love that he did his research and he understood and understands what that voice sounds like and tried to match it here so it feels seamless. It doesn't feel like we are an external company being hired to create this content and it's very distinctly our content. No, it's their content. We're helping them create it. So it feels like the brand. It feels authentic. I also like the way that he did this. It's a little bit hard to see here, but he did that attribution, which is in this case Wikimedia Commons. So this was a Creative Commons source. Very cool. And then same thing. So this is photo by such and such on Unsplash. And so I thought he nailed it. I thought he did a really great job thinking about the overall strategy for the creative brief and what was being asked of him in terms of this Canada Day celebration, in terms of the posts working together. If you read through them, they kind of interlink or interweave, which is brilliant. So they should work together. And they also, they just speak to the brand voice. So I really like that. I think he kind of hit all of the right things when it came to these pieces. And he had alt text. I should mention that. There was alt text included. Let's go here. Oh, footsteps running above me. Here is the alt text that he included. So yeah, I thought it was really, really great. So in this case, an adult bison walks calmly across the orange center lines of a paved road. He's a poetic guy as well. So they're a little bit more maybe poetic or inflated than they need to be, but I still like them. Its head lowered and front right hoof lifted. So it's pretty detailed. Metal plates on the road and the guardrail suggest that it's standing on a bridge. The road turns right and vanishes surrounding the trees with leaves in the autumn colors. Overhead, the sky is wide, cloudy, and gray. He's a poet. But he's also, I think, a brilliant kind of strategic mind when it comes to this stuff. So there you have it. Jonathan's the star of the show today. Any final questions about this ask, this part of your workbook? And again, I hope it's fun. I hope it's thinking in a different way, in a different direction, because again, it's something that is so important to think about. In terms of an overall content strategy. No longer is it just print or digital in terms of a campaign. Oftentimes it is both. Oftentimes we need to think across both and how does that resonate and how do we make that work from one medium to another. So I think this is a good exercise and introduction to that, rooted in the foundation of good copyright and copyright protection, as well as accessibility. Here is the summary. I am spent. You guys have been listening for a heck of a long time. Thank you for sticking with us. You deserve a medal. Here is the summary. So some printing companies, like us at Pressed for Time, have a digital strategy department to help clients with their holistic marketing needs, their print and their digital. Some don't, but some do. Storytelling has always been a part of human culture, but it's really making a huge resurgence in this crowded world of digital marketing. Connecting authentically and emotionally with an audience is a huge, important skill. And while technology is constantly changing all the time, copyright, accessibility, not going anywhere. So sourcing copyright-free images is easier than you might think through sources like Wikimedia Commons, creativecommons.org, Pexels, Unsplash. Those are just a few. And then there are a number of very simple ways, techniques, to facilitate more inclusive experiences online, on social media. And we just kind of scratched the surface today, but that's the low-hanging fruit. Those are the really easy things you can do is, for example, alt text, image descriptions, camel case hashtagging, and including those hashtags in the comments versus the caption, body caption. Okay, I feel like we've covered a lot of ground. And hopefully that you found this valuable. I know that, again, speaking with all of the guests in a podcast realm or forum was hugely valuable for me to kind of reconnect and tap back into, oh yeah, here's what's happening in the world of accessibility. And maybe it's piqued your interest and you can take that accessibility course when it is available. All right, so what do you need to do? Well, read and review all of the stuff for week 9. Much of it is kind of reinforcing what we did here today, but there is some new content and new information that will help you execute your week 9 module 3 workbook piece. Finalize your module 2 workbook. That's due Friday. Early submissions are welcomed. So it's due Friday, November 12th, 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. And that's it. I'm spent. I need a nap. Maybe you do too. Thanks for sticking around, everybody. We'll be here for a few minutes if you have any questions. Otherwise, have an amazing rest of the week. And we will see you on the flippity flip. We'll see you next Wednesday. And Jay will do his thing next Wednesday. Exciting. Okay, there we go.